Hi, and welcome to Create Love Arts. My name is Sharon, and we are working on the Suzette Style Dishcloth tutorial part 2. This is how to finish it off, and if you followed along with our last video, part 1, you would have learned how to do the first repeat rows, and then I asked you to go ahead and do another repeat row, an extra 6 of the Suzette stitch, and then your last row is a single crochet row to end it off. Now, when you're making a dishcloth, you don't really have to do a border, but you see how the edge gets a little bumpy? A border just neatens it up a bit and makes it a little bit more finished looking. So this is one of the ones that I have made, and you can see the difference between the side stitches. These are just a bit more, finished looking. It binds off the ends. It's not necessary. You don't have to do it, but we are going to work on that and finishing off this cloth. Now, I had you go all the way to that last single crochet row, and we are using a 5mm hook. Sorry, going the wrong direction on that one. 5mm crochet hook, otherwise known as an H8 in the US terms, and a number 4 of your choice cotton yarn. So I've chosen to use the yellow for reasons. It's easier to see. That's all. It's just easier to see. And so on camera, the yellow really pops. However, when we're doing this border, I'm going to show you how to do a color change. And the reason I'm showing you the color change is not just because it's something that you should have, you should learn, because that's definitely a thing you need to know, but also because it will be a nice contrast so you can see where those stitches are going in along this side edge. You don't have regular stitches over here like you do up here. These are easy to work in. These you have to do a little bit of guesstimating. So I'm gonna show you how to do that today. So I had you go all the way to that last row of single crochet, and that would have been on your pattern. If you have the pattern with you, you can get the pattern for free on my Facebook page, which is Create Love Arts, and you can download it right there. But you should be finished with row 26, or at least to the end of that. And on that pattern, it says row 26, chain 1, SC or single crochet all the way across the row. Do not turn, do not end or cut yarn, 30 stitches total. So I'm going to show you why we did not end yarn on that, because I wanted to give you, that's how a stitch marker works, by the way. You put it right through that working loop, snap it in there, you can pull, it's not coming out. So they're one of my best friends in the whole entire universe. So there's my stitch marker out the way. You will need yarn, needle, and scissors today, which we didn't need before, but you will need them on this episode or tutorial number 2. So I went all the way across, and I did not put in my last stitch. I was going to do that now. So you put in your last stitch of single crochet. Make sure you're going right up to that edge and doing all 30 stitches on this row. Now, one of the things that in the pattern on the border, I tell you, don't cut your yarn, don't turn your work, leave it right here. The reason why is because we are going to go around now. We're going to start here, we're going to build an edge, and then we're going to just border down and around, all the way around your whole piece. And at the end, I'll show you how to make that slip stitch we were talking about. And one of the things I did want to do is change the color. So you are not going to do this unless you are also changing colors. You're just going to continue on with your yarn of choice around this project. It does not matter if it's the same color, or if you want to try changing colors, that's fine too. So I'm going to take out my very last single crochet here. And what I'm going to do pop my hook back in there, pinky pointer pinch. I'm going to start that single crochet. I'm going to pull my 2 loops up. I have my 2 loops for single crochet on the hook. See? I'm going to take this working yarn that I'm using and I'm going to push it off to the side here, okay? Underneath my stitch. I'm just going to hold it there. Then I'm going to take my new yarn, whatever color that might be, leaving a 4 to 6 inch tail here. I'm going to wrap it just like I am wrapping to use my yarn. Making sure that you hold this one in place. You take your hook and you wrap it with the new yarn and pull it through both loops, okay? That's my color change. This is a seamless way to color change without messing up the stitches color here, because that last single crochet is right here. That's my new yarn up there. I want to make sure you can see that. That's my 30th single crochet, and that's my new yarn for the border. So now you can just cut. If you're changing colors, then you can just cut a nice tail off here, wherever you want that to land. And what I like to do while I'm working on it, I take it out at the end, but I like to wrap these two. I just want to do a quick half knot, just to cinch it there so that it stays out of my way, okay? And it won't pull through because I already have a loop here. But I wouldn't want to play too much with it. Now you can crochet right over the 2 ends here for a little ways, but you still need to weave them in at the end. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to push them off to the back there. Let's see how I just moved them out of my way. Now with either the yarn that you already had or this new color yarn, when you start your border, the first thing you're going to do is chain 1. You're doing that because that's a turning row. You're turning this work just in a different way. Now, I don't know if you can see that. See that hole where the last stitch went in here? Not the stitch I just made, but the hole from the row before. That hole right there, you're going to go into that and make 3 single crochets in that same hole. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. All right. Now we've turned our corner. Do you see how the work turned as I was doing that? It's an automatic thing that will happen as you're turning corners. You need to make sure that you have more than 1 stitch in that corner space. You need 3 at least. If you're going bigger, you could need even up to 5. I've seen up to 5. 3 is the standard and it'll work. It's fine. Now I do want you to see this. I see that little loop right there. That's my turning chain. Okay, just like on the straight rows, we don't count that as a stitch. What I want you to do, if you have a stitch marker or even a scrap piece of yarn, just pop it through that first crochet, single crochet, not here, not on the little loop, but on the actual stitch here. We're going to pop that right through. That way, when we get all the way around the piece, because now we're going to work in rounds, when we get all the way around this, you'll know that is the stitch that you need to end in, not this little guy here, okay? That's why we're doing that. So now the first side on this work of border is going to be the trickiest maybe for you, only because what you need to do is work evenly along this edge. You don't need a perfect count here. What you do need is to make sure that you're not overstitching. You don't want to put a stitch into every single tiny crevice of it. You want it to lay flat, and in order for that to do that, the stitches need to be kind of evenly spaced. So what I'm going to do here to make mine evenly spaced, I'm going to skip, we put 3 in that place right there in that first hole. So we're going to go over, this is our half double, okay? I'm going to go, do you see how there's like a loop right here on the edge? right there. That's our half double. We're just going to go into that loop and make a single crochet in it. Okay. One single. Then we have what looks like just a little, that's your turning chain right there. So we're going to skip over that and go right into the next little loop that we see here. It will space my stitches a little bit further apart than maybe, oh no, I don't like that. I take that back. We're going backwards. We are going to go into that first. That is a loop there. See it? Oh, I was silly. We're going to go in there. We're going to make a single. We're going to go into the next loop and make a single. It actually is a little easier to see on this. Probably because it's a lighter color yarn. All right, now all the loops don't look perfect. They're twisted because we turned. So just make sure that you're going into the loopy part and not, you don't want to do two here. You don't want to go down. You don't want to go down in here, okay? Because then you're going to lose that definite, oh my goodness. Then you're going to lose, sorry about that, the definition here. If we go down here, it's going to pull that stitch open and you're going to have a gap there. I mean, it's fine. It can, if you do it consistently throughout, it looks fine. But for my purposes, I'd prefer not to do that. So just every loop you see, and this is a good way, it's a nice way to see the side anatomy of your project. I see a loop here. I'm going to go through that. So really, you are going to go through the turning chain and then the half double on the side. You're just using the side part of the stitch and the turning chain to get in there. And it looks like it's coming out kind of evenly for me here. It does not have to be perfect. Again, this is a cloth used for cleaning things. So it doesn't need to be perfect. When you're doing a bigger project, you might want to, fidget with it a little bit more. But for practice purposes, this is just so you see how a border can be created. And this is a simple border. Single crochet makes a pretty little simple border. You can get real fancy with this. And some people really do that. They have lace edging and all kinds of things you can do. I think they're beautiful. And there are some that surprised me with how pretty they are. And some borders can get to be, you're not just going to do this one row around like I have. You are going to do multiple rows around it and grow your blanket even, or project, I shouldn't say blanket, but your project even wider and longer by doing the different amounts of rows after you get around this first row. So that's all you're going to do. I am going to let you keep going and get to this end here, this next corner, and then we'll go through that corner and I will show you what happens on the other side, and I'm going to let you get all the way around. I don't want this video to get quite as long as some of the previous ones. I do apologize for the length. I'm learning how to do this and how to edit them appropriately, so please bear with me. I do not mean to suck up, 30 minutes of your time every day or 40 minutes or whatnot. That's not my goal. This should not take quite as long. I talk too much, number one. I've been told that a few times in my life. And, that's part of it. But I do try to keep moving while I'm doing it. So there's that. All right, I've made it to my corner. I have a space here and a space here. What I want to do is I'm going to go into this space down here. That is my first space for the next row. All right. And this row is going to be a lot easier because you can clearly see their stitches. But for here, we're going to start here. This is where we're going to do our turn. So we're going to poke the hook in and grab up our yarn and make 3 single crochets right there in that same exact space. All right. Now, as we turn this corner, your single crochets could pop over and cover this stitch. Don't worry about it, but I want you to move those over out of the way and get in there. That's going to be your first for this side. All right. So you're just going to follow along all the way down, doing single crochets into those stitches. So what you're really doing is working right now. You can see the stitches upside down. That is a single crochet right there. And you're working into the bump. There's that bump that we worked into. See how it leaves you a tiny little space there? That is the bottom of your very beginning chain. And that is what you work into to make a border. And see, there's your two loops from your chain. These are your chain spaces. So you're just going to travel right along. Every time you get to a corner, this is where you might want to count is these edge rows here. Oh, I am really making myself more work, aren't I? Okay, these edge spaces right here that you're working into right now, I would count those across to 30. And then you have it very good and even on at least the end rows, the top and the bottom. It shouldn't really matter that much, but you don't want them too close together or too far apart, or it will look a little funny on the edges on the sides. But this will give you the standard of what it should look like on your edge as well. And again, mine's not perfect. Yours will not be either, and that's all right. It's a dishcloth. It's not the end of the world. It's just really good practice. So we're just going to travel around, get all the way to the other side, and I will meet you back here. I'm going to pause the video, and you have time to get all the way around and catch up before I come back. See you in a minute. Hi, I am back faster than I anticipated. When we get to this next corner, I wanted to show you something. So now I have 29 stitches here. I'm going into my 30th stitch. This is that slip knot from the beginning, all right? And what I want you to do here, because it is a little different, you're going to move that tail out of your way. We are going to sew this in at the end or weave it in at the end. So don't worry about that tail. Just push it off to the back. What I want you to do is go into that last stitch and make a regular stitch, a regular single crochet there. Don't put your 3 singles in that hole. Go to the next one, which is right here on the side. You're going to go right around that tail. I don't know if you can see it real well. You're going to go right around that tail. You're not going to go into that last stitch from the end or the beginning row. You are going to go to the very next space there in that little hole there. You can see there's a loop right here. That's where I want you to make your 3 single crochets. Okay. And you're going to do that at the other side when we get to the other corner as well. But that corner will not have the same, it won't have that end piece tail here. So you're just going to leave that off to the back. We're going to sew that in after. All right. And I will let you keep working your way around. Okay. So I'm on my last side, which is the bottom of your piece. Well, the top, actually. The bottom would be the starting chain, the top side. And I've just come around that corner and did my 3 on the side there. And I'm going to go straight into that first stitch that I made on this row, on the row underneath, and do my single. I lost my tension there. Do my singles all the way across. I stopped here because I wanted to make sure that you saw how to get that single around into that after that corner is finished. And we're just going to crochet right along, single crochets all the way. I hope you guys have enjoyed this pattern. It's super simple, but it teaches all the best stitches, all the basics. There is one more stitch that I did not teach in the tutorial. Well, 2. One was the slip stitch, and that one, I didn't teach it because it is quite simply the simplest thing you can possibly do. And you'll use it on every project all the way through, no matter what it is, and it's called a slip stitch. And you're going to use it at the end. So we're going to get right on up to that. And before I get to that, the other stitch I did not teach was a triple or a triple crochet. There are a couple different terms for it, but it's basically a doubled up double. And instead of wrapping your hook one time for a double crochet, you'd wrap it twice and I'll just make one real quick here and then take it out. You go wrap it around 2 times, go through and wrap again, pull through 2, pull through 2, there's your double, and then pull through the last 2. That's a triple. It's a much taller stitch, and I don't find that you use them very often at all. There are some, unique patterns that they do have them every now and then, especially in round blankets in the corners. Sometimes they'll do stuff like that, but it's not very common. So I didn't want to waste too much time on it. Now I'm here to where that turning chain is right there. I want to count real quick. I don't want to count these 3 in the corner. I want to count my row edge. It should still be 30 on this. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 24, 26, 28, 29. I am not going into this stitch here for my 30th. That's the turning chain for the border. My 30th stitch is actually right here. You can see there's still just a little guy there waiting for a stitch. That's where we're going in for that one. That's your last stitch. So when you get to that stitch, you can see our stitch marker is ready to rock in the stitch that we need to go into. A slip stitch is simply this. At the end of any, especially round projects, at the end of any round project, and you can use them for different stitches, and they do stitch work with them too, but for this, any round work where you're going in a circle, you are going to want to, unless they tell you continuous rounds, I don't want to mess you up, but most patterns will have you go into this stitch, which is your first stitch, okay? You're going to pull through a loop, but you're not going to make another loop. You're going to pull that loop straight through your working yarn. That's a slip stitch. That's it. It's a slip stitch. I can pull it right back out and show you one more time. This is what we're working with. That was our last stitch on this round. We're going to go into where the stitch marker was, which is our very first stitch of this round. We're going to poke our hook through, make sure there's the 2 loops, wrap your yarn and pull it through, and then pull it straight through that loop, okay? Then to end this, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1. We're going to leave a tail here, and we're going to cut this yarn. All right? You're going to take your hook, and you're just going to pull that string right out, and then give it a tug. That makes a little knot. See how that makes just a little knot there? You're done. To finish off your project, you're going to take that stitch marker out. You're going to admire your beautiful work real quick. Make sure that your border looks, you should have done that before you cut. Sorry. But make sure your border looks pretty even all the way around. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mine is certainly not. And it's not about perfection. I keep wanting to say that because I know too many people who get really hard on themselves, including myself when I first began. It's more of a recommendation for myself too, to remember these things are supposed to be fun. All right. So now we flip it over. We can see that we have 1 straggler here from the beginning. And because I changed colors, I have 3. If you did not change colors, you would only have 1 that needs to be tucked in. So I'm going to give you a quick tutorial. I am going to move this camera down because it's going to be a little bit easier for me to work around and also for you to see the stitch, what I'm doing here. So you're going to grab your yarn needle. Again, you can use these plastic yarn needles with the big eye, or you can use the metal ones that have either embroidery needles, they're metal, and they have a hook in them, like a little bend, or straight ones, as long as they have a big enough eye to poke that thicker yarn through. It's not a regular sewing needle. They're not expensive. I think I bought a pack of these that came in multiple different sizes for, I don't know, $5 maybe. Could have been a little higher because I was going crazy buying stuff at that time, but I want to say they weren't expensive. Regular yarn hooks or yarn needles are very inexpensive. So I'm just going to thread the end of the yarn I want to tuck in and tuck in these ends. Oh, I'm moving my stuff. I'm trying to get this right up to you. So you can see that the border is going to hide some of this, okay? And it doesn't matter if you have a different color or if you use the same color. It really doesn't matter. What you're going to do, our goal is to just tuck this in. So I'm going to go under the very next stitch right here, the single crochet, and pull through. And then I'm going to keep going across. I just shove the needle sometimes. In fact, it's good to break the fibers through in between the stitches. So underneath these stitches, you've got the tops and the bottoms that you can't see on the other side here. If you poke that needle through those stitches, you're just going to have a more secure tail. And that's a good thing. You don't want it to come out. See how I just broke that and pulled through one little strand of it? That's okay. Because you're going to pull this all the way through. Make sure that you get all the tension. Give it a quick pull. Give it a tug. Now, see, you can see the yellow, but the yellow is already underneath. So it's not going to hurt anything. Then I turn it a little bit. And I go back the way I came. And what I do, when I went through that last little strand, I did that for a couple reasons, but also because I can now go right back under that first leg of the last one I pulled through and do it again. Now I'm really making this tight in here. I'm just going to shove my little needle all the way 4 or 5 stitches, maybe 6 until I come out. Okay. See how it's just shoved in there? You're going to pull that through again. The goal is to weave it at least 3 times back and forth. It can leave you a bit of a bump there. So if you don't prefer to do it that way, you can also bring it down. And by that, what I mean is I'm going to go underneath these last 3 here and pull it out the other side here. And again, I'm just going underneath the stitches I've created. And I'm going to go down. Do you see how these stitches here are together and grouped up? Those are the ones we want to go into because then they're a little bit more hidden. So I'm just going to pop through those stitches there. If I can get the needle in there. Pop through those and bring it up. And again, if you don't want the bump, if you don't like the way it feels when you go back and forth multiple times, you can always go around. Just sew it in a way that you can't see it, or if you don't like to feel it, you can sew in any direction as long as you're hiding it. The only time a problem will really come up is when you're working in color work and doing something with multiple colors in the same places. That can get a little bit tricky to tie in those ends. But then, I'm just going around and poking it through where I can. It's not a big deal. So also, one of the other things I found out about the weaving of the ends, which I despise, by the way, it is my least favorite thing to do. I don't like sewing. It doesn't feel good on my hands, but it can also, see my little gap there from that stitch that opened up way back when? It's another good time to get in here and maybe tighten it back up. I went around in a circle. So now when I pull this through, I can give that a little tug and then weave it up and almost sew it back together. And you're not going to know because I'm just weaving my stitch in there. See? I kind of closed that gap up, okay? I don't want it too closed, but there. It looks better than it did. So now I've come out I've had this thing going this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and all the way back around. It's not coming out. So at this point, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to pull this. I'm going to give it a little tug, okay? And then I'm going to cut it. I don't want to cut my work, all right? I don't want to cut what I just did. I want to cut this. So that's why I give it a little tug, so I can leave a tiny little gap there. Give it a snip. Now you can still see my little end poking out here. I'm just going to pull and tug. Now you see it. Now you don't. It's gone. That's it. These little ends can creep back out through wash. When you wash and dry them, you just pull and tug and they'll go away. If they pull too far, because I used so much to go around and around, you can give it a little pull, snip it again, and hide it back in there. Just be careful how much you're pulling, because if you didn't sew enough, you're going to run out and it's going to start pulling apart. So that was one. Now I'm going to show you real quick how to do the green one. When you have a different color, you don't want to try to go through the yellow stitches with that because, well, it's not going to work very well for you. So real quick, and then I'm going to end this video because here we go again. When you get to this one, this is where we tied off. I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to poke it straight down into the stitch that was right in front of that knot. I'm going to poke it straight down in there. Okay? And give it a little tug. You will still have a little bump there, but see, it kind of still looks more rounded. It looks fine. And you will have a little bump, but it's not big. It's not that big of a deal. You're going to only want to go through the green stitches with this. So I'm just going to tuck up under. And again, go through grouping stitches and it will be easier to hide. If I get to a place where it's looking funny and I don't like how it's popping through, I'll go up. I'll go up like this. Just go up into that one, come down into this one. The goal is to keep this from unraveling. That's all this is. So as long as you kind of stick around with the way the stitches naturally form, you're good. Or you can tuck it under. The thing I wanted to point out here is when you tuck it under these last legs here of the single crochets, especially doubles, you can hide it pretty well. Half doubles you can too. With singles, you want to stay as close to the top of that stitch as you can get when you're putting these through, because if you go down too low, you're going to see them. If you go too up high, you won't. Now I'm going to backtrack, and I went through that stitch there on purpose. I'm going to go behind it. And again, once you're going back around, poke through what you just did. It's fine. It is perfect. It'll split the threads so that it's even harder for it to come back out later. And that is that. That's all there is to it. I should go back one more time, but that's the tutorial. That's how you make the Suzette dishcloth. And if you have any questions or you need any extra help, please feel free to leave comments or to message me on the Facebook page of Create Love Arts. And we are good to go. I'm just going to snip that like I did the other one. Give it a tug, snip it, and pull it. I have 2 more to do. You should have none if you were able to follow along here. And that is it. That's our very simple Suzette style dishcloth. In this one is in Peaches and Cream, which is Spin Right Yarnspirations brand, and you can find these Peaches and Cream anywhere. These are great for dish towels, for dishcloths, and I also did one in I Love This cotton yarn. from Hobby Lobby because I find it to be softer for a face cloth. So that's it. You have finally made your very first project, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm hoping to do a stitch library so that you can learn some of the most basic stitch groupings that you see out on a ton of different patterns. And it's just a good reminder of how to do some of the basic stitches in a different way. And it's a very cool experience to try some of them. I have a few favorites. I really like corner to corner. I like moss stitch, and I hate to say this, but bobble stitch and puff stitches. They're beautiful, beautiful stitches. So I hope you join me back here on my next journey through the stitch library. And I hope you really enjoyed learning how to make the basic stitches and a really cute little dishcloth. So thank you so much for your support. And please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you want to get the updates. Thank you so much.